I'm going to go straight into introducing our keynote. Now, it's Melissa Houghton, and Melissa is a lead software engineer at Azenix, however you want to say it. She's also Microsoft MVP in developer technologies. And she's focused mainly on the Angular.NET Azure stuff, but she actually does all the things. What else should I say? Well, Melissa is an advocate for women in tech. That's something I'm a big proponent of as well, to be honest. I think we need more diverse crowds in tech. That's one of the ways we can do that. She does a ton of community things all over. Azure Reactor, the NDC Sydney like this, meetups. I'm sure she can tell you all about it as well. And of course, she travels all over the world when we can, talking at tech conferences as well. Now, she is originally from California, but she's pretty much an Aussie now. We're not going to give her back. So I'm hoping Melissa will join me on the stream here. Oh, there she is. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm excited to be here today, even if it is in a virtual context.
I know. But next year, we're going to be there live in Sydney, right? So
yes, definitely. I'm excited to
for sure.
go up and visit.
Oh man, it's it is what it is. We're here. We're doing everything that we can online. Now you're going to be talking about leadership through self-awareness this morning. And is there anything you want to mention beforehand, or should we just jump straight into your talk? What do you reckon?
We can jump straight into it.
Sweet. All right. So I'm going to be back with Melissa with some Q&A. If you do have questions for Melissa throughout the talk, put them in the YouTube chat. And I will get to them after Melissa has done her talk. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Lars. Cool. So my talk today, as Lars mentioned, is leadership through self-awareness. And you can become a great leader by understanding yourself. A leader is not determined by a title, but by influence over others. And anyone can become a leader. But first, you need the right skills. You can build your leadership skills and become a great leader through self-awareness. In this talk, I will dive into self-awareness, what it is, how to develop it, how self-awareness can not only make you a better leader, but how it can help your followers become leaders too. Building up our skills to understand ourselves creates a positive impact on those around us and helps us to navigate the difficult world we're living in and enables us to become great leaders. But first, a little bit more about me. So as Lars mentioned, my name is Melissa Houghton, and I'm a lead software engineer at Azenix and a Microsoft MVP in developer technologies. I'm very active online, especially on Twitter, so please do connect with me on there and share your thoughts as I'm going in my talk today. You may also recognize me as one of your hosts from NDC Melbourne, if you're able to catch NDC Melbourne. And I am coming to you live from Melbourne, so unfortunately I'm not in Sydney either, but I do hope to go and visit there for next year's conference. We have people tuning in from all over the world and people who have helped organize and are behind the scenes from all over the world as well. So thank you to everyone for listening today and those who helped make this event happen. I was actually lucky enough to help with organizing NDC Sydney this year and helped a little bit on the agenda committee. If you're thinking I chose myself to be the keynote, you are very much mistaken. Oh, and my cat is here to say hello. Of course, hopefully he gets his cuddles out at the beginning. But anyways, I didn't choose myself for this talk. If you're able to catch my talk last year, it was all about imposter syndrome, which I suffer very heavily from and definitely battled against it in the lead up for today. Imposter syndrome is commonly felt by leaders, and my tactics for dealing with imposter syndrome are very related to self-awareness. And my understanding of that and my battle against it have helped me to build my self-awareness. And all these experiences have fed into my talk that I have for you today. And my idea for this talk is not a unique one. When writing this talk, I pulled from many different leadership training courses I've done throughout my career. And I did tons of research, found hundreds and hundreds of articles and scientific studies on this very topic. But the idea for me originated from a leadership training camp that I attended and helped to run through Rotary Club. The camp was for young adults aged 18 to 28, called the Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, or we called it RYLA for short. And it was all focused on leadership through self-awareness. The camp was over a week long in the woods with no phones, no computers, completely off the grid. I was lucky enough to attend the camp in 2016 and then become a counselor for a few years after that to help teach others those same skills. So this photo here is of me as a counselor at the camp with the group of young adults that I helped to teach. I'm not trying to retrofit this camp into a conference talk, but that idea of becoming a better leader by understanding yourself is one that has always stuck with me. And many other leadership training courses that I've done have focused on very similar concepts. If I could see everyone there in the audience, I would ask you to raise your hand if you've ever done a personality test as part of some sort of corporate training. And I'm going to guess that many of you have. And this is because self-awareness and understanding ourselves, our personalities, and our different traits is one of the key skills to becoming a great leader, to working well with others and successfully being in a team. Knowing how to improve our leadership skills boils down to understanding oneself. But first, what is leadership? Leadership has many definitions. In the dictionary, it says that leadership is the action of leading a group of people or an organization. I didn't find this too helpful, so I looked up the definition of lead, and it told me that lead is the initiative in an action, an example for others to follow. So if we put this together, we can say that leadership is the action of taking the initiative and setting an example for others to follow. Now, I like this definition because to me, a leader is someone with followers. You can't force people to follow you. Other people will decide whether you are truly a leader or not, because leadership is not actually about you. It's about those around you. And it's not always the person who may have lead in their title or manager or executive or whatever it may be. It's the person who is truly influencing, the one who is motivating, supporting, and enabling those around them. And the leader could be anyone at any level with any type of personality, background, or experience. They could be you. A manager, on the other hand, controls to get a goal. There is that common depiction of manager versus leader, showing the whole push and pull, where the manager is pushing the employees from the back, giving them commands, and generally not actually helping out too much. Where the leader is out at the front, pulling the team forward and driving them to their goal. With the right skills, attitude, and approach, people will follow. So what makes a good leader? I would like to hear from everyone watching on the stream if I can. I would love to see comments in the chat coming from you of what you think makes a good leader. There are many different leadership attributes that people have, and anyone can have it at any level. It's not just the ones at the front. So to you, what makes a good leader? People can be leaders in many different contexts. We have here a comment saying a good leader manages the people, not the tasks, and everyone works differently. Yes, that's definitely true. It's about looking at everyone's different skill sets. Leaders are the ones that are helping others out, and they're even the ones that are supporting the leader. We have to manage each other's strengths and weaknesses and work together to become great leaders. I see integrity and empathy. Leaders are the ones who are doing the little tasks that other people may have forgotten. They're checking in with the team members who may be quiet lately. There doesn't always have to just be one leader. Think about in a game of basketball. You have the coach, the person making the plays, someone who did the assist, and someone who actually shot the hoop. Who is the leader in that situation? All of them could be leaders. It's about taking this step, initiative, and working together to make that goal happen. I see more things in the chat: accountability, helping you to achieve your full potential, democracy, A leader sets a direction works to clear those blockers for the team, avoiding those minefields. Someone who inspires. Any of us can be good leaders. It's all about taking that step and initiative and working towards a goal to make that happen. In the game of basketball, they all played that small role to get to the end, and they were leaders in their own way. So in the words of Bill Gates, as we look ahead to the next century, leaders will be those who empower others. But how do we empower others? How do we become that person that others want to follow? How do we separate ourselves from the managers and become the leader? It all comes down to understanding ourselves. Before we look at taking care of others, we have to first look at taking care of ourselves and our actions and how they are received by the other people. So self-awareness does not equal leadership, but it is a key foundation. And all those traits that people mentioned, the being inspirational, being accountable, having integrity and empathy, delegating those tasks and managing everything effectively, having active listening and good communication, the ability to really empower others, that all first starts with yourself. So self-awareness is really when you are aware of yourself. It's in the name, right? It's about being aware of your values, your personality, your strengths, your weaknesses, your habits and emotions, and how they affect your actions and the actions of those around you. People are not born completely self-aware, yet research has found that from infancy, we do develop that rudimentary sense of self-awareness. And as we go through life, we continue to build our self-awareness, and you can continue to work on it no matter what age you are. But true self-awareness is actually quite rare. Research estimates that only 10 to 15% of people are truly self-aware. And the concept of self-awareness has appeared in texts for centuries, and the concept of self pondered by many for even longer. However, the official study of self-awareness, as we know it now, began with Shelley Duvall and Robert Wickland in 1972. Duvall and Wickland proposed that at a given moment, people can focus attention on the external self or your internal self and your environment around you. This theory and further research actually separates self-awareness into two parts. The first is your internal or your private self-awareness. This is how you look at yourself, looking at your inner self, your emotions, and your actions. Generally, we don't actually really focus on ourselves, but in certain situations, it can cause our attention to be drawn inward. Take a moment now to think about how you are breathing. Take a deep breath in and out. Generally, we don't actually focus on our breathing, but because I mentioned it to you now and drew your attention to it, that caused you to become self-aware in that moment of your breathing. So this is an internal type of self-awareness. It happens when you become aware of an aspect of yourself in some private way, an awareness of your internal state. So seeing your face in a mirror or suddenly thinking about the way you're breathing in and out, that is internal self-awareness. And the other part of this is external self-awareness, which is our awareness, how it's perceived by others, of how we appear to others. So it's an imagined perspective of our external self, an awareness of your appearance on how others see you. So it's called imagined or perceived because we are coming to conclusions on what this external self looks like to people. It's about our understanding of how our actions are impacting others. So for example, right now I'm giving this presentation and I'm aware of my body movements and maybe little things that I might be doing, and I'm coming to conclusions on how you are viewing me based on them. I don't actually know exactly what you're thinking, but I am having a bit of external self-awareness because you're watching me. And when we are aware that we're being watched and evaluated, we often try to behave in ways that are socially acceptable or desirable. It's like when we tell a joke that might be a little bit contentious and we look at our friends to see how they might react, because we know initially our reactions, it might not actually fit into social norms. And so we go off that external self-awareness and the reactions of others to understand our external self. So the internal self-awareness tends to result in behavior that reflects our personal values, and our external self-awareness can cause behavior to become more consistent with that of social expectations and societal norms. So from these two types of self-awareness, Dr. Tasha Urich has developed 4 self-awareness archetypes. So if we start in the bottom left corner, we have seekers. This type has both low internal and external self-awareness. They don't really know too much about themselves, and they're seeking the information. But because they're not aware, they often have feelings that they are frustrated or they're stuck. If we go up to the top left corner, we have introspectors. These people have high internal and low external. They're clear on who they are and what their values are, but they often don't challenge their views and have a closed mindset. And this can harm their relationships and limit their success. In the bottom right-hand corner, we have pleasers. They have low internal and high external. So they're focusing more on pleasing other people and how they appear within society. But this means they overlook things that are actually important to them, and they can makes them feel like they're not being fulfilled. And in the top right corner, we have the small few who are truly self-aware. So true self-awareness is when you have high internal self-awareness and external. They know who they are, but they're continuously seeking feedback, having an open mind, and adjusting to fit into their environment and improving. So building self-awareness is an ongoing task, and we have to ensure that we are working on both sides of our self-awareness. Because if we don't, it can have a negative outcome. If we do not build it correctly, we start to focus on the sort of negative side effects. Focusing too much on ourselves can actually make us a bit self-absorbed, and to the point where we're not actually paying attention to the world around us. We have that closed mindset. We're not gaining insight from others. It can also lead to distress, excessive self-consciousness, or anxiety. There does tend to be an element of vulnerability with self-awareness as well. And that negative focus that comes with it can really become a downer in a cycle that we get stuck in. People who are externally self-aware tend to be very concerned about how others are judging them based on their action. And this can lead to what's called evaluation anxiety, in which people become distressed, anxious, or worried about how they're being perceived by others. It's something called the sadder but wiser paradox that says learning about ourselves not only makes us wiser, but it can make us sadder as well. So how do we change this? How do we make sure we're not mulling over these negative emotions and instead reflecting objectively, aiming to find out more? It starts with asking the right questions, practicing that introspection, understanding ourselves and our surroundings. But introspection alone does not equal happiness or success. And if we do it incorrectly, it can make things worse. So much is hidden that in our unconscious minds, that we often end up creating excuses and form conclusions that are not necessarily true. And research has found that we are mentally not actually able to pull up all of our different thoughts and feelings from our unconscious mind. So we need to focus on moving forward instead of fixating on what happened. Change your reflective questions from why me to what can I do to improve? From why is this happening to what can I do to make it better? Change your questions from why to what. Change from why am I so upset to what can make me happy. Focusing on becoming the aware archetype, building both our external and internal self-awareness, looking at what you're doing, what you are feeling, and what your blind spots may be, focusing on learnings, improvements, and moving forward from our failures. There is a technique called the Johari window, which is designed to help people understand their relationships with themselves and their others. In this exercise, participants are given a list of adjectives, such as cheerful, observant, outgoing, and they choose the ones that they feel best describe themselves and their own personality. Then some of their peers get the same exact list, and they choose adjectives that they think describes that person. And you then compare the two lists and find out which ones match to describe the subject. And those are what is known to others and known to self. So that's what fits into the external self. The ones that are overlapping in other ways fit into the other 4 quadrants of the window, depending on what the crossover was for selecting them. But these 4 areas represent your private internal self, things that you wrote down that the other people didn't, or even your blind spots, things that the other people wrote down that you didn't write out about yourself. And those unknown adjectives that neither person chose can be your unconscious self. So doing something like this and having a tool with impact from your information from your peers can help us understand how others perceive us, how that matches our reflection, and it helps us to focus on which areas we may need to work on and help us to change those questions from why to what. There's also a lot of positive outcomes with self-awareness. When we change those questions from why to what, we start to get those positives. And these are really increased understanding of our self-development needs, allowing us to focus on what really are our strengths and weaknesses, higher levels of confidence and creativity, an open mindset and the ability to adapt, acceptance and understanding of ourselves and those around us. We become more proactive at work, more willing to take on a challenge or step up and take the initiative. We understand where we can fit in, what our strengths are, and where we may need to rely on the strengths of others. We end up making better decisions, building stronger relationships, having more effective communication. And research has found that self-awareness is the most important capability for leaders to develop. And it can create more successful and satisfied employees, more profitable organizations, and more effective leaders. If we want to understand ourselves, first we need to look at things like our personality type. Personalities are determined by genetics, environments, and situations. It's really the characteristic pattern of thinking and feeling or behaving. And there's many different ways to measure your personality and different types of personality scales. One that I like is Myers-Briggs, which gives you one of 16 personality types. It's described on the screen, and I know there's a whole ton of tiny little information up there, and I could do a full talk just on personality types alone. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about this, I would definitely recommend going and researching it a bit more afterwards, after this talk. But basically what the personality type does for you is it looks at where you sit on the scale within the different areas. It looks at how you prefer your world focus, whether you're more inward or outward. It looks at how you process information, how you like to make decisions, and how you prefer to live your outer life, or how much structure you prefer. When you're looking to figure out your personality type, I would really look for some sort of framework that gives you a breakdown of what each piece means and where you sit on the scale, because it is a scale and it does move around as well, depending on your situation. Some people may have different personalities in a work context versus a home context. So if you take personality tests in different times of your life, you may come up with different results. But doing these kind of personality tests, especially with a team environment, can be really helpful for understanding not only yourself, but your team as well. Have your team take one of these and share the results with each other. It's beneficial for us to understand how other people may naturally feel and versus how we will. I had a previous role where I was working alongside a colleague, and both of us were in leadership positions and our roles were overlapping. We were constantly butting heads and just approaching problems in different ways and had a whole bunch of communication issues. As a group, we did personality tests, and I actually discovered this person was on the complete opposite end of the scale from me. And that gave me some brand new insights. Having the understanding of how she operated and liked to operate versus how I did allowed me to monitor my actions when I was working with her, adjust my communication style to one that more suited what she naturally enjoyed, and inevitably, it helped us to work better together. As a leader, when you understand your personality and the personality of your team, you can use these insights to adjust and work better together. In addition to personality types, there's many different types of leadership styles. And understanding what kind of style works best for us and in a given situation can really help us to achieve our goals. There's one theory that's commonly referred to that it's called the full range leadership model. It has 3 distinct styles, one of which is split into 2 subcategories. The first is laissez-faire, and that's the least active, more of a passive engagement as a leader. And it gives all of the power to make decisions to the followers. It gives them the complete freedom to make decisions over their work. So this can be highly effective if your team is super experienced and really trustworthy. But if you have more of a junior team that's just starting out, it may not be the best leadership style to use. The next is called transactional leadership, and that's working on a motivational system through rewards and punishment. So the first subcategory in that is management by exception. And that's when the management actually steps in when the team is not meeting those standards. So it can help in certain situations where the team may be falling behind and needs that extra helping hands. But it can also make the team a bit frustrated if they feel like you're taking over for them. The next part of that is transactional contingent reward, which is an active and positive exchange between leaders and followers, and where their followers are rewarded or recognized for accomplishing the achieved objective. So transactional leadership establishes more of a standardized practices within an organization. So it can be really useful if your organization is growing and going through some sort of transformation. The last is called transformational. And this is proven to be the most effective within the modern workforce, especially in the world of the pandemic, because transformational leadership is all about that humanitarian approach. And it's driven in the most reliant leadership style on self-awareness. It's defined as going beyond exchanging inducements for desired performance by developing, intellectually stimulating, and inspiring followers to transcend their own self-interest for a higher collective purpose, mission, or vision. Transformational leaders are visionaries, and they're really role models who drive organizations. Another part of being self-aware and being a great leader is all about your communication. Communication is often cited as the most important leadership skill and skill in working in a team. And internal communications in an organization can significantly increase employees' productivity and engagement. And with the recent move to our remote and hybrid working, communication is more important than ever. There's a famous 7-38-55 rule in communication, which was created by Professor Albert Mirchabin in 1971. And what he says is that the meaning of a message is 7% verbal, 38% tone and expression, and 55% body language. There's a bit of a debate on the specifics of this theory, but researchers agree that somewhere between 70 to 90% of communication is nonverbal. So what does this mean for a remote workforce? It means that we have to try our best to still convey those nonverbal cues in our communication. Try to have your camera on when you can and connect in that way. Remember that people are watching you, so don't completely zone out, and try to look forward if you can. I know it's very difficult depending on our home situations. But do also pay attention to your tone of voice, even just in your writing, in the emails and messages that you're sending out. And provide supplemental information for your team to absorb that helps give context in nonverbal ways. Use those emojis and those GIFs to support your message, or send a video recording when you can't have a video chat face-to-face. In the study of remote leadership, communication effectiveness was also a strong predicator of leadership performance. So having really effective communication made it so that leaders performed better in the remote working world. And communication also comes in many different forms and styles. So understanding your own style is essential and communicating that to your team. Do you like to have all of the details beforehand, or would you rather just have a short, quick summary of what happens? And vice versa with your teammates. Understanding how they like to be communicated to can help you all work better together. So acquiring strong communication skills can help you to better connect with your friends, colleagues, and even your own leaders. For me, the most important leadership skill that is really underpinned and driven by self-awareness is emotional intelligence. This is sometimes referred to as EQ, which is emotional quotient, and how you measure emotional intelligence. And the very most essential part in being able to have some sort of degree of emotional intelligence is driving your self-awareness. So people with a high degree of self-awareness have a solid understanding of their own emotions, strengths, weaknesses, and what drives them. And emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize those emotions, understand what they're telling you, and realize how your emotions affect people around you. It also involves your perception of other people's emotions. When you understand what they're feeling, and this allows you to manage those relationships effectively and use emotions to your benefit. There are 4 components that you can break down emotional intelligence into. And the first really is self-awareness, the ability to detect your emotions and decipher what those different emotions that you're feeling may be. Perceiving emotions represents a really basic aspect of emotional intelligence, being able to process emotional information. The next is self-management, being able to control and really harness those emotions that we have around us. Catch ourselves before we react in a really harsh way because we're a bit angry or maybe we're stressed out. Being able to adapt and stay positive. We can use our emotions to facilitate different cognitive activities such as problem solving and thinking and becoming more creative. An emotionally intelligent person can really capitalize on their moods and emotions to really fit the task at hand. And the next category is looking more external. So that's the social awareness, the ability to understand the emotions that other people may be having. To appreciate that people experience emotions differently from ourselves and understand how emotions may evolve at other time, and really being able to empathize with other people, being able to detect and decipher emotions in people's faces, in videos or in pictures. And when you look at empathy, that's a whole nother talk in itself as well. But empathy can be broken down into 3 main parts. The cognitive section, which is I know how you think. The more emotional section, which is I know how you feel. And empathetic concern, which is I care about you. And you really need all 3 of these parts to really have empathy and strong emotional intelligence and be able to connect with others. And lastly, we have using those emotions for our relationship management, managing them in other people through coaching and mentoring, and being able to diffuse a conflict or a situation, and being that inspirational leader that people may need. Becoming a diffuser and lifting the team up when they're down, harnessing emotions, both good and bad, and managing them to achieve your goals. So why is this important? Well, although in the past, a good leader was usually more one who was, at the front giving orders, what we now see as a manager, and they controlled the overall performance of the organization. But now everything is different. Leaders are expected to be less authoritarian and more humanitarian. They're expected to motivate and create a sense of belonging and empowerment. They are expected to make employees feel comfortable, which helps them to work more effectively. People want leaders who are empathetic and understanding. Leaders who still need to grow emotionally often have problems managing stress in difficult situations. So growing our emotional intelligence can help us to ensure we are able to manage our energy effectively and have a really solid life balance and get through the tough times. In a study done by the Center for Creative Leadership in the United States, they found that the 3 main reasons for executives who fail are difficulty in handling change, inability to work well in a team, and poor interpersonal relations. People with high emotional intelligence are curious. They want to learn more and are not afraid to ask those questions. They're able to empathize and put themselves in the shoes of others and diffuse situations. They make strong connections and are great leaders. So, how do you build up your emotional intelligence? You can start really by just creating a list of the different emotions that you may be feeling. Sit down and write down as many emotions that you actually know of, that you can list and come to your mind, because having a bigger emotional vocabulary can help us to then match those emotions to the feelings that we're having and being able to articulate them. If you find your list of emotions that you can think off the top of your head is not very big, go out and do some research and find out what more emotions there are available in the world. Observe how you react in different situations and reflect on reactions that may have turned out poorly. Examine how you handled stressful situations and things that you have done in the past to help you manage them as well. Practice putting yourself in other people's shoes. Let's say, for example, a team member comes to you very upset because they got something wrong. Maybe they performed poorly or the outcome was not to the standard that they expected. You may have seen this happen and thought, man, that wasn't a big deal. Like, why are they upset? It doesn't matter. But if they come to you upset and you tell them that, how do you think they'll react? They might be taken aback, think that you don't care, and frustrated that you're not willing to help, and maybe even annoyed at your not understanding of them. Instead, try to put yourself in their shoes. Understand that people react differently to different situations, and everyone's definition of hard is different. Acknowledge their emotions and manage your own to empathize with them in their situation. Similarly, before you send off that angry email, take a step back and reflect and revisit with a new mindset once your emotions have calmed down a bit. If you do react in an emotionally driven way, make sure you take ownership and responsibility for what has happened and work to improve it in the future. Recognizing your emotions and reactions when they happen will help you to manage them in the future. And the ability to do this is really grounded in self-awareness. Another tool that's really important in self-awareness leadership is a concept called self-leadership. And that's actually really just being a leader for yourself. It's a process of influencing yourself to achieve your goals, because not all managers that you may have are great leaders. And so you can't actually rely on people around you in leadership positions to help you up to become self-aware or become a great leader. Sometimes you have to lead yourself. And you can influence your self-leadership using 3 key strategies. The first is looking at your behavior, having self-observation, setting goals for yourself, making sure they're smart goals, that you're tracking them and revisiting them, and looking at your little cues and idiosyncrasies. The next is by building in natural rewards. This is making sure there's enjoyable features in your work task and building in pleasure, making sure you're doing things that you enjoy, or making things a bit more fun by making it a little game or giving yourself some sort of reward at the end. The next is constructive thought patterns. This is evaluating one's beliefs and assumptions and practicing positive self-talk. Turn negative thoughts into positive ones and motivate yourself to be the best leader that you can be. Taken together, these strategies really describe how individuals gain awareness over their own beliefs and their behaviors, and then consciously work towards mentally track and realize their goals. I find these strategies are actually quite similar to my tricks to overcoming imposter syndrome, which are to recognize, rationalize, and reflect. And building those up and becoming a self-leader and overcoming that imposter syndrome helps you to become a good leader yourself. When you do this, other people then perceive you as a stronger, more capable leader. And the overall performance of a leader is stronger when they're skilled in leading themselves. Closely related to this is another skill called self-efficacy. And self-efficacy refers to an individual's belief in their capacity to execute behaviors necessary to produce specific performance attainments. So self-efficacy really reflects that confidence we have in our ability to motivate or control our behaviors and our social environment. It's the ability to believe in ourselves to succeed. And this skill is very important to motivation, to resilience, getting up when times are tough and keep going at it, to taking on challenging problems, stepping outside of our comfort zone, and becoming more engaged in our work. Studies have shown that when individuals feel confident to lead, it positively impacts people's evaluation of them, and their followers see them as a more capable leader. So you can develop self-efficacy through experience, seeing others around you succeed, and support and persuasion from your team and the people around you. And it can help you to manage your psychological responses. So working on these skills will make us more confident, stronger leaders. So leadership and building up all of these benefits of self-awareness do not just benefit us, they benefit our followers, the most important people in leadership, in being a leader. They're the people who put us in that position in the first place. They see us as role models and end up modeling our behavior. They're using our success and our openness and our awareness as motivation for themselves. It helps them to build up their self-efficacy and their pursuit for self-awareness. And you can also share your knowledge and encourage the learnings and encourage your team to reflect. Coach rather than give answers, and use something called the 5 why technique to get to the real root of the problem, which is all about asking why 5 times. It helps you to shed light on the situation by getting to the root of the problem. Those continual questions help you to get what is really happening beneath. I once had a manager who I actually can see on the YouTube chat today, Adam Watkins, who's watching, shout out to you. But I once had him as a manager, and he pretty much answered all of my questions with questions. And at the time, I did find it a bit frustrating, but it was very useful for helping me to get to the root of the situation and guide myself in my introspection. I would ask him, should I apply to the Rotary Leadership Camp? He would say, what do you think? I would say, I'm thinking it's a good experience. I don't know. What do you think? And he would say, why? And it would keep going like that. Inevitably, in the end, I would answer my own questions, and his line of questioning would lead me to that answer, encouraging my introspection. And you can do this for your followers as well. A study was actually published earlier this year that was looking at the connection of leader self-awareness and follow leadership as well. And basically, it said that if a leader has strong self-awareness, that will feed into their ability to build up self-leadership, which in turn raises their self-efficacy, which in turn makes their followers more likely to become leaders and more likely to be nominated for promotion. So having that self-awareness as a leader helps your followers to build their self-awareness themselves. And in turn, it makes them become more likely to be leaders themselves. As I mentioned at the beginning, leaders can be in any context. There's not just one at the top. There's people in many different situations. So you need many leaders in your team to be successful and reach that goal. And there's also benefits that go on to the organization. Empirical research has consistently demonstrated that leadership behaviors influence organizational performance. Workers are more trusting of leaders who are self-aware. They're more inspired and more motivated. External relationships with clients and customers end up being stronger. In the words of Maya Angelou, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Being self-aware and having the strong relationships can make people feel good, and it creates those positive connections. Self-awareness in leaders and your team creates an impact. It makes everyone more engaged in their work, and in the end produces better results for your organization. We can all build self-awareness. First, by working to understand ourselves, then practicing and reevaluating with the context of others. According to Duvall and Wickland's theory, anything that makes people focus intention on their self will increase self-awareness. And they actually did some research by placing people in front of very large mirrors and videotaping them, then having them listen to a recording of themselves while they were watching themselves and being recorded in turn. So I think this is kind of funny because everyone absolutely hates listening to themselves. And whenever I do a talk, I go back and listen to it afterwards, listen to the recording. And it always makes me feel quite uncomfortable watching myself give a presentation, watching myself speak. But I become a better speaker overall as a result, because I'm able to look for those little tics and maybe things that I'm doing that maybe I should improve for next time. So I'm able to help me become self-aware of the things that I am doing. There are also things called self-awareness triggers, which can be really big events in our lives, things that are really impactful or really change the way things happen, something like a pandemic, But these triggers by themselves do not fully develop self-awareness. They need to be supplemented by that positive reflection, asking the questions of what, not why. And without those triggers, you can also look to your team and the people around you, get that 360 feedback, which is encouraging you to give feedback on yourself and look at how you've been doing, and also supplement it with the feedback from your people around you at all levels. There's also scientific tests to assess and target different areas of self-awareness that you may be missing. You can take those personality tests and look up different leadership and communication styles, paying attention to your actions and the impact they may have on others. Do you need to maybe work on your mindfulness, building up your emotional intelligence, your communication, trying to look more at your external self, having that open mind? Keep a journal, take a step back, and slow down when your emotions start to boil, and really practice that self-regulation. In summary, we have learned a lot about leadership, that anyone can be a leader. It's not just about the title, but it's really about having people to follow you. We learned what self-awareness is, how it can be negative if we don't seek it properly, but we can fix this by changing our whys to whats. We've learned about different leadership skills, styles, and emotional intelligence. We learn the positive of these in leadership and how they're all underpinned by self-awareness. We have heard how self-awareness can be beneficial to ourselves, our team, and our organization. Leadership through self-awareness can make you a great leader. It can help us to become leaders not just for ourselves, but for our team and our organization. I will leave you with a quote from Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want. So thank you. If you scan the QR code on the screen or go to that bit.ly link there, you can access all of my resources that I used today. I've put up a whole bunch of different articles and different blog posts that I did, as long as links to some personality tests. My slides will be available there. I'm not sure if they're up there at the moment, but I'll put them up there shortly as well. So thank you very much, everyone who tuned in today. And I don't know how we are doing for time, but I might take some questions as well. And before that, I also have some swag to give away from our friends at Microsoft. If you go to the links up there, you can claim your free Azure swag. Unfortunately, the swag is only for people in Australia and New Zealand due to shipping constraints, but we also have some Azure passes there too. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. And I think we do have some time for questions. Let's see.
We do indeed. Well done, Melissa. Now,
Thank you.
I learned something from my company recently got acquired by another company, and they have this tradition of, instead of clapping on a Zoom call because no one can hear it, everybody does this.
Ah,
And it's kind of anyway. So I thought I'll just do this.
There's also I think this is like clapping in sign language as well.
Yes,
So I've seen
right.
people use that too.
It's interesting when you see a Zoom call with like 200 people and everybody does this or that or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well done. We do have a couple of questions if you don't mind.
Cool. Yeah.
So the first one is, as a leader, have you had like stressful moments where someone may have behaved inappropriately, say with a client, and what'd you do? How do you manage that?
Yeah. So I think it's about first talking with the person in a private context as well. You don't want to sort of call them out and from everyone else, because you never know what might be happening and they might not actually be even aware of the situation.
That's right.
So pulling the person aside, having a chat about what happened, making sure you're using facts and really outlining this is what happened and this is the results, and getting their insights on, how did you think that went? So they might already be aware that something negative happened. They might be practicing their self-awareness and realized after the fact, hey, I should have changed that. But they also, maybe they haven't figured it out. So you can help coach them through, why it was negative and work with them to improve it for next time. And you probably also have to go and do some ground control with the client as well, and use that empathy and emotional intelligence to help mend that relationship.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's an interesting one, because it's always easy when everything's going smoothly. Like the team's doing well, right? It's always when something doesn't go to plan that all these things come out. So that's really good. Now, have you got any tools for recommendation for self-assessment or EQ, anything like that?
Yeah, so I in my resources, I'll share the link on the YouTube shortly. But there is some free sort of quizzes online that you can do to check your level of self-awareness, and they pretty much all also require input from your friends, because that's part of that external self-awareness. So it's about comparing the two. In terms of building up your own emotional intelligence, it's creating a list of the different emotions that researching ones that you may not, and really just practicing recognizing your emotions. You can, after a situation, you use those what questions of thinking about what happened in that situation, your reactions that you had. Was it emotionally driven, where maybe you were stressed out, so you reacted negatively, and practice recognizing it as it's happening and taking a step back.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's important as well to say that this is not something that's easy, right? This is all really, really hard, but it's so worth it. Like the self-awareness part, especially. So, and there's one last question. I'm just checking YouTube. Oh, many claps! Yay!
Yeah, that's good.
If there's anything, please ask questions. I can still see them, so keep them coming. All right. So I have one more. Just we'll wait to see if anyone else asks. What was your most recent focus been on in terms of self-leadership? Like, what was your reward for achieving it?
Self-leadership. Well, I guess I can say, for example, it can just be little things that I reward myself with. So maybe I have, I needed to do my slides for this talk, for example, but I really wanted to go play Skyrim. So that was actually something that happened recently. I wanted to spend my day off, my weekend, just, sitting around playing Skyrim. But I was like, no, I need to get my slides done and have that done before I can go do it. So it's, you can use little rewards like that, just kind of saying, after this, I'll be able to relax, get it done first, then you can do that.
If only it worked with cats, hey?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's excellent. I don't have anything else. Is there anything you want to mention? Like, where can we see you next? What's your next gig?
Yeah, I actually next week I'm speaking at .NET Conf. So that's on Thursday next week. So that's the big Microsoft .NET conference where
Fantastic.
they're releasing .NET 6. And my talk is .NET Internet of Things. So talking about how you can use .NET for IoT, which is really exciting.
Very interesting. Very different talk than this one, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
That's excellent. Well, thank you so much, Melissa. That's been very insightful. I mean, I sat here actually watching it on the other computer the whole time. So that's very cool.
Nice.
So yeah, I hope to. I think you'll be on the stream for a little bit in case people have other questions.
Yeah.
Ask them there. But other than that, thank you very much, and I shall invite my co-host William to the screen as well.
Thank you very much for having me.